Good evening. Good time zone and warm greetings to wherever you are in the world. This is Amelia, aka Space.Puffin, and we are... Yeah, that's where we are. I've also had a pretty rough work week. A couple of pretty rough weeks, actually, which means I haven't read in almost 2 weeks now. And I'm very impatient to get to chapter 34, especially considering the major, not really cliffhanger, but the anticipation we kind of left off on. But not having read means that, you know, I've been thinking. Because not having the energy to prep or film a video apparently does not mean having no energy for my brain to work through my corkboard notes and construct a few more or less plausible or insane unhinged scenarios. Here, I'll do a reenactment of my post-work dissociation sessions for you. But what if he didn't kill by WUXIANG? Whoa, where did that come from? More on that in a bit. Because the only person currently more conspicuously absent from the plot than the big bad calamity himself is Sky Daddy. And I have thoughts about this. A lot of them. They'll come out later. I've structured a whole discussion for a reason. Let me try to stick to my plan. So, last time we closed out chapter 34 with a bang. Or rather, with a splat, I suppose. But before we go into the drama chapter, the trauma chapter, let's backpedal just a little bit more and revisit the nice chapter with the nicer things. It's not even a nice chapter, it just has nicer things, such as character introductions. Because we do start the chapter by meeting a new character, Nangongjie, who is an official of the lower court. And it was pointed out to me that the mistake of calling it the middle court is a translation mistake, as the original text does in fact say the lower court. And the only thing we really know about her is that LIAN likes her because she's really good at her job. Which is, you know, kind of bookkeeping, keeping tabs on things, which gives major Lingwen vibes. And you know, could be, like, I don't know, we don't have enough details to be able to tell if this is Lingwen or not, but this really could be Lingwen before ascending as a heavenly official of the upper court. And I think it would be really nice if it is. But they might also become a whole side character by themselves that we're just getting introduced to, so I'm not getting my hopes up just yet. But we're putting her on the board. Over here next to Rainmaster, who is the next character we have to talk about. Because while we still don't have a name, we do know now that the Rainmaster is from the kingdom of Yushi. However, I'm a bit uncertain about this place name, as it was mentioned to me that Yushi also means Rainmaster. So maybe this is more like Yusha. Either way, I am putting this up as a place name next to the Rainmaster for now. The kingdom of the Rainmaster, I suppose. And we are learning more things about the Rainmaster, such as the fact that they are a royal. So LIAN reasons that he's not going to bring any gifts of like gems and jewelry because he personally doesn't really have any feelings about riches. So this other royal person probably wouldn't either. And this Rainmaster really does seem like a very peculiar person because despite being royalty, their temporary residence is out in nowhere in this beautiful farmland area. And it seems like they're living in this little shack. And one of their subordinates or deputies is this person who shape shifts from an ox. Which admittedly threw me off for a bit because there's like this chance that this is the Rainmaster who's like kind of deceiving LIAN in that, yeah, I'm actually the Rainmaster, I'm just talking about the Rainmaster as if the Rainmaster is inside this empty house. But that kind of feels off as well, because the Rainmaster, narratively speaking, doesn't seem like they should be a deceiving person. After all, they are willing to give aid. In fact, they are giving aid, going against the flow, because, you know, the heavenly officials were not gonna give aid, so the Rainmaster has to be contrary, and I respect that. And there is also this other detail. They are recently injured. And that's kind of where my thoughts are right now. A royal person recently injured, and of Lian's generation of gods, someone he knows of. These details put together leads me to think that couldn't the Rainmaster possibly be the princess who slit her own throat? One of the 4 tales. I am a little bit unsure about this, because it would explain why the Rainmaster isn't speaking. If the Rainmaster indeed is inside this little shack that Lian is talking to. If her throat was slit and she is recovering from that, of course she would not be speaking. However, it seems like this Rainmaster ascended before Lian. Was this injury like... Did the injury happen when, like, if this is indeed the same princess, when she was still mortal, or did this injury happen when after she got ascended? Because the text is kind of confusing in that regard. Like, has it really taken this long to build that residence for the new Rainmaster in heaven? Like I know Lian is heaven's favorite, heaven's delight, so yes, his residence in heaven was probably built very quickly. I actually don't have any confirmation for that just yet, but I assume he has it, because in the present he does make a comparison of the new one that Jun-woo erects for him to the old one. But so yeah, it's a little bit confusing still. I'm not 100% on this because of these kind of timeline details that I'm not sure of. But it would be really cool, and I am anticipating the introduction of these characters. And so far, Rainmaster seems very cool to me, because, you know, going against the flow. And also, does not reside in heaven. And yes, I just talked about how their residence in heaven wasn't ready yet, and therefore they have a temporary residence, but they seem to be chilling down there. They seem to be like, yeah, this rich farmland, very picturesque landscape, just sitting here, chilling, handing out a few favors. They're living the life. They're not thirsting, not starving, and they're not in heaven. They're not even in the communication array, and honestly, that's a green flag. At this point, any heavenly official who's not in the communication array might actually be a green flag. Qingxuan, the exception that proves the rule. Mooching, a red flag. So anyway, whether or not the Rainmaster is indeed that princess, we know that they are weaker than Lian in the sense of less spiritual power. They don't have as many temples or as many followers. And that in combination with their injuries makes it so that lending the Rainmaster hat is the best they can do. And because we also learn from the ox person that literally all of heaven is watching like this is a spectacle and are choosing not to help because they know where this is going. Yeah, it leaves such a sour taste in my mouth, and I am happy that at least someone wants to give some sort of aid when asked for it. Even if, as we see in the immediate, next chapter, it's not helping a lot. Because immediately after Lian gets the hat, he goes, ladles up a lot of water in the Yushi kingdom, goes to Yong'an and splashes it around, and it's barely anything. It's like this brief moment of joy. And then chapter 33. Gosh, I don't know how many times I've said this, but the setup is just wonderfully done. Not just what's been done before this chapter, but this chapter itself. The way all the incidents we're being told about, everything from where the first Yong'an people decided to settle to the missing dog incident to all these other things that caused friction and caused conflict between the capital people and the new arrivals. Like, it's such a convincing way to set up the them versus us mentality, which together with the failure to integrate the first wave of refugees and then the arrival of droves more of them, thousands more, becomes the firewood, becomes the fuel, and the spark is this family of three who falls to their doom or commits suicide out of sheer grief. Coincidentally, right after praying to LIAN to protect them, which gives him just enough time to arrive at the scene and see it all play out, but not early enough to stop it. Unlucky. Oof. But then there's the matter of this charm, which I have to bring up, because seemingly it is powerful enough to act as a portable shrine, which makes me think that it must have been expensive AF. Like, how did these people get a hold of it? And what is this mechanism? Does it have something to do with the material it's made of? Where could they get this? Who made this charm? And how exactly is it connected to whatever makes, LIAN hear their prayers? Because if these are, easily made or easy to come by, even in Yong'an, why would people need to go to shrines and temples to pray? So I'm asking, are these charms actually commonplace in the universe? Or is this a case of, convenience? Narrative convenience. As in, it would be really impactful to have LIAN arrive just in the nick of time and to have had this family, pray for protection from him and have him hear that. And because this is impactful, the author decides to do it without really considering the mechanisms of this charm, because this is a really OP charm that, if it is a commonplace item, would negate a lot of the problems and issues that we've already set up. So I wonder if this sort of charm is going to pop up again. Because so far, again, like, the main mechanism of giving prayers seems to be through these temples and shrines. But if you can just pray anywhere using these charms, there needs to be more explanation given for this. But, the effect was achieved. It wasn't really something I was thinking as I was reading, it's something I was thinking afterwards. So I don't know how notable this is or if this is even going to be picked up again, but I am pointing this out because as a writer, you should be aware of all the mechanisms you are introducing to your story like this, because they can become loopholes later on. Of course, it's hard for you guys to discuss this with me without spoiling me, but I just wanted to point that out there. So let's leave it at that and let's continue. Ying is back in the story. He is still sad and resentful and is facing a lot of unfair treatment. As in, we see him pointing out the hypocrisy of the Xianle capital citizens, and then he just, gets a mouthful of persimmon for it. But he is also at the gates during this event, and he draws first blood for Yong'an. He climbs the gates and cuts down the man who cut down that father and his child. And then at the end of the chapter, he stares right through LIAN, who is doing his invisible god thing, I suppose, and at the palace. And we are left with the ominous sentence of how Xianle was thrown into chaos. Where is this going? Because Yong'an, as it is very unorganized right now. I'm guessing Ying is going to be sort of a unifying factor here. But how effective is the Yong'an resistance going to be at this point? Because while they do have a tradition for martial arts, they have sick and injured with them. They have their own, women and children and elderly people. So how can they possibly fight against the capital of Xianle with its, a trained army, I'm assuming? And that is where I believe the plague will come in. And from what we already know about the human face disease, the multi-face disease, or I don't remember all the titles the correct way, but from what we've seen of it, it's obviously not a regular disease. As in, it's probably more like a curse. The little faces, that they had on their faces. The face disease, the moon of diseases. Anyway. And we know the plague is connected to Bai Wuxiang, who appears to, have appeared to be against Xianle. So my current theory here is, did the human face disease only affect people from Xianle, not the people of Yong'an? In which case, that would allow Yong'an to gain the upper hand and eventually win this rebellion conflict thing. And I wonder if perhaps Long Ying will be the one to kill the king and queen. In a sense, knowing what happens in Yong'an later, as in 500 years later, that is kind of poetic, narratively speaking. And it really would complicate how LIAN feels and relates to this character right now. As for why Bai Wuxiang appears, we actually don't know that yet. We still have to figure that out. And we also have to figure out why it takes heaven such a long time to deal with him, because, the disease gets to more or less wipe out the kingdom of Xianle, right? Like, what exactly happened here? Was he very subtle in revealing himself? Like, he was just, the disease at first and nobody knew what this was until he finally reveals that, haha, I am a big bad calamity. I guess. Yeah, you know what? Let me just put on my tinfoil hat and just get to talk about what I actually want to talk about already. Okay, you guys ready? Here goes. John Wu killed Bai Wuxiang. Or did he? Okay, hear me out. I've been thinking about this for a while, actually. So, Mount Taizang's peak, the tall one, has a temple, dedicated to John Wu, the Heavenly Emperor, right? So, Mei Nianqing was a follower of John Wu. Or at least, implied to be. At least he thinks gods are, worship worthy. And he spent a lot of time in, that palace of divine might. So it's very likely that Mei Nianqing, who, is the state preceptor of Xianle, which just happens to be the kingdom where this young, very promising prince is growing up and being a cultivation genius, I guess. Like, he's very likely to ascend, and the emperor has already showed interest in him and, met him at that bridge with the demon and all that. And Mei Nianqing taught him. He taught the prince, who is gonna be the emperor's favorite. And since we know that state preceptors apparently are allowed to talk to gods, Mei Nianqing probably talked to John Wu, right? So my theory is that once John Wu, discovers what this is about, he does not kill Bai Wuxiang. He does not kill Mei Nianqing. Yeah, I'm tying this into my theory that Mei Nianqing might actually become Bai Wuxiang eventually. All that, evil teacher-disciple thing. Like, I can see this going down. It could make sense, and it fits with, my suspicion of John Wu's fate in this story. As in, I think he's either going to die or turn out to be the bigger and badder evil. And if this is what actually ends up happening, there are a lot of ways we can take this, plot-wise, like uncountable ways. Like, it's been hinted to us that the Emperor is just, growing stronger and stronger over the centuries. So one of the theories of what happens to Bai Wuxiang could be a sort of, evil-contained storyline. As in, John Wu captures Bai Wuxiang and somehow manages to use this Ghost King and his powers. I will use it for good. And then, where we are in the story, Bai Wuxiang escapes in the form of Ying, which is how I'm tying him back into this. It's just a very real possibility that John Woo didn't kill Bai Wuxiang and instead kept him around. Though this particular idea of keeping him around to harvest his powers and using that to grow stronger means that we have to revisit the sort of what actually powers a ghost versus a god. And before we can really answer any of these things, we need to, you know, fucking meet the guy. We need to meet Bai Wuxiang. Where is he? Where is he? Well, there is a lot of ship left to sink. And the only way we can uncover this is to, you know, get through it. But before we do that, let's do the question from the Temple of Corkboards and mentions. So the winner of last week's betting pool is the wonderful Kea. Thank you so much for participating. This has been so much fun. And Dave sent me a question to open on camera. Hi Puffin, here's the question. If the TGCF main characters all lived in the modern world, what kind of jobs do you think they'd have and how would they meet each other? The latter part being a bonus from Aria approved by the Spoiler Council. Oh lord. So I'm approved by the Spoiler Council to write modern AUs? Let's go! Huh. Oh, this is fun, but there are so many ways you can go about this. Like, I'm sure you can fit this into more or less any sort of modern AU. Like, if I have to guess, LIAN probably appears as a kindergarten teacher a lot. You can see it, right? Kindergarten teacher? He gives the vibe of someone who will be cast as a kindergarten teacher. Though I would actually love to read a fic where he actually gets to be a homeless man, as he is in the canon story most of the time. That's not an angle I see done in fanfiction a lot. Can we do that for this? LIAN down on his luck, conglomerate heir who, you know, lost everything when his parents' company took a turn for the worse. Now his family is dead, his cousin is a gangster somewhere, and he literally sleeps outside. Like he travels around and does like odd jobs for people in exchange for a room and board sort of thing, but will occasionally have to sleep outside. I can absolutely see this happening. Actual garbage man LIAN. Though I also imagine he'd make a great thrift shop owner. Just an antique store or something, or a coffee shop with a lot of like old furniture and, you know, stuff like that. There are a lot of modern jobs you can give LIAN. I always think about Heaven as this huge company anyways. I feel like I could just make this an office AU. Mooching and Fengshen, rivals in the sales department. But as for what jobs would suit them, you know what? I'm going to say police investigators. And they can be kind of rivals there too. Fengshen is very good at, you know, following the code and doing as he's told. And you know, Mooching is also good at knowing what the code is, but is also more inquisitive. In fact, let's turn this around. LIAN also worked with them. They were like a team or something. But LIAN going outside of the rules, you know, bending rules in order to maybe, you know, save people, help as he perceives it, then, you know, lands him in hot water and he's no longer allowed to practice, that's not what we say, be a police investigator. Forcefully retired into homelessness, and then, you know, he just tunes out, he doesn't want anything to do with crime stuff anymore. So fast forward a few years, he knows nothing of what is going on anymore. And so we are free to introduce, you know, as a semi-criminal Hua Chang. I mean, he probably has a sort of gambling business. That's what we're gonna do with this AU, this police, crime, law and order AU that we just made. We, you know, John Woo, head of the force, Ling Wen with Pei Ming and maybe Shou Wudu, you know, working as morticians. No, wait, that's not the word, not mortician. Forensics. The three tumors are in forensics and they have like, you know, this morbid humor that no one else really finds funny, but, you know, they're working with dead bodies, so. Shi Qingxuan, lawyer, his buddy Ming Yi, police attorney. Long Chencho gets to be our rookie on the force. You know what? We've got a whole AU going here. And Hualian's chance meeting, I suppose, because that was the question I was gonna answer, right? The chance meeting is when LIAN kind of gets roped back into it for some reason. He doesn't want to be here. He doesn't want to do anything with the police force anymore. But he ends up having to work this case with all these dead women Of course, we're doing the Ghost Groom case. Just modern AU. I don't know how that's gonna work yet, but we will have a chance meeting with WUXIANG, and it's gonna be it's just gonna be the plot of TGCF, but in this AU basically. I'm too lazy to think of anything else right now. And yeah, that's it. I apologize, it's a weeknight. In fact, it is probably too late to be filming anything right now, but I really wanted to read something this week as well. And so here we are. So Kea, thank you so much for the question. And if you would like to ask me a question by participating in the betting pool over at the Temple of Corkboards, you can do that by joining my server and donating to me on Ko-fi, which is completely, optional. You get some previews, you get to be a part of some extra channels in the Discord server, among others the Gambler's Den. And you get your name on my board. Not this one, but this one. My gorgeous little coffee board full of the followers of the Temple of Corkboards. And I have quite a few updates. And first up, a thank you to Dragon Love. Thank you so much for coming back with a repeat donation. I have upgraded your name tag to make your name a little bit more visible. And I also have like 9 hearts that need to go up, so bear with me. So to everyone who's receiving a heart today, thank you guys so much for your repeated donations. I really hope that the pins and the shoutouts helps to convey how grateful I really am. The first heart today is for DK Williams. Well, this pink one is being added to Dave, the Wonderful Misfortunes, just over here. I have another one for Tiny Meeps, and also for the Wonderful Muley. This one here is for Misty up in this corner, and another one for the Wonderful Emma Slavine. A pink one for Maru, and this one here is for Miss Angel. And lastly, a pink heart for Shady. And again, thank you guys so much for the repeated donations. They do mean a lot to me. And for those of you who happen to be sending me coffees monthly and have been for a long time, I am again just beyond grateful. Thank you guys so much for all your support and for continuing to watching these videos. I really hope you're enjoying them. But I am not done. I picked another cherry blossom flower for the wonderful Melody Arya. Thank you so much for coming back to donate to me. In addition, again, to all the other things that you do, keeping me company every day, modding the server, modding the comment section, you're absolutely amazing, Aria. So here's a little cherry blossom to add to my appreciation of you. This green little flower pin goes to the wonderful VV Super. Thank you so much for coming back to donate. And now I've prettied up your name tag a little too. And this green fruit, it's for the wonderful Dark Yoko Kitsune. Thank you so much for coming back to donate to me again. You've got quite a pink collection up here, but you didn't have any fruits yet, so I have to add one for you. So thank you so much for your generosity. And lastly, this Temple Guardian goes to Shori. Shori, who has been supporting me since forever, and who writes that she's watching my videos the moment they are out. Shori, you've been around for so long. I am so happy that you're still enjoying these videos, and I adore you. Thank you so much for all your company and for all your kind words. And I really hope that you'll be able to enjoy these videos until the very end of this series. And here we are, the updated corkboard for this week. So thank you guys so much for all your donations and for all the laughs that we're having in the server. I've had such a fun time making this board, and I have in fact put in an order for another batch of pins. Just some more fun ones that I can add to the people who've already collected so many. To make the board prettier, which, it brings me joy, and it's just a small fun thing that I get to do in exchange for all your support. It really means the world to me that you guys are still enjoying these videos enough to actually want to support me monetarily. Especially since I try not to make that a requirement, but it's again a fun thing that's made this channel so much easier to run. There, all that is out of the way. And before we get to reading, I just wanted to show you guys this mug I got printed for my own happiness. It's little Hong Chick. Hua Chick? I used to call him Hua Chick, but now that we know that he is Honghong-er. He gets to be Hong Chick now. He's absolutely gorgeous. This is a sticker that we use in my Discord server as well, designed by the wonderful Nimue. And I had to get some other things printed, so I decided why don't I just, you know, make myself a mug of happiness. Just as an experiment. I'm not selling these or anything. I just wanted to show him off to let you guys know that he is now lighting up my day and keeping my tea warm. Oh, I love him so much. Oh, my dear child. Where are you in all of this? He must be like, you know, in the city, pretty, you know, terrified about what is going on. Or, you know, not even understanding what is going on. He's just, you know, trying to take care of himself, trying to find flowers for the little shrines, you know? Gosh, that's the biggest crime of all of this. The king closed the gates, and now Honghong-er can't go outside to find flowers for the crown prince shrines. Now that all that is out of the way, that means I finally have some time to read, and I need to be in bed in like 2 hours at the latest. Again, it's a weeknight. I don't know how long this reading session is gonna be, but I know that the first few chapters aren't that long. So I'm gonna get myself another cup of tea, and then I'm gonna jump into this one. It's been so long, and I almost feel bad for these hiatuses, but you know, I'm a working woman. Sadly, not a full-time or even half-time, part-time YouTuber who lives and makes videos in my parents' basement. Like the first corkboard was paid for by my own blood, sweat and tears. All the consequent ones by my lovely followers. Okay, but all the jokes aside, let's get to it. Let's get to reading before I get too tired to make, you know, commentary, proper commentary. I need to be awake enough to take notes and understand what's happening. Okay, with my notes and my little audience ready, I think I'm ready as well. We'll see, won't we? So, WUXIANG, you can help me hold a pen, I guess. You can have that. And here we are. Like, I try to not glance at the chapter titles before I actually read them, even though I do put my little, like, mark here so that I know how far I got. So, here we are. Chapter 34. Xianle in chaos, Crown Prince returns to the mortal realm. And that's the descent, isn't it? This is Xilian's official re-entry into the kingdom of Xianle, isn't it? Oh no. Oh gosh, I'm expecting kind of like the brief, you know, relief sort of seeing him again, both among, you know, his followers, but also for his parents, because, you know, we've been talking about how his ascension is sort of like a death metaphor. So in some sense, I'm expecting this to be celebrated, but also at this point in the story, I don't know if I think this is a good idea. I don't think that I will agree with this decision. And I know that there are going to be other people who will not agree with this decision, but we'll see what happens. Oh my lord. Let's do it. For displaced disaster victims like those from Yong'an, to pick a fight against the Imperial Army was a losing battle, a gross overestimation of their own strength. Yet cornered people often possess the courage to court ruin and fight a losing battle. After that riot, the tens of thousands of Yong'an refugees finally left the city gates and rebuilt their temporary camps some distance away. Still, they stubbornly refused to leave. They could die on the road if they kept going, but if staying was also death, what was the difference? Using the rations and water the king had distributed, supplementing them with bark, wild herbs, plant roots, critters and insects, and topping it all off with resentment and loathing, those people possessed an unimaginably persistent will to live and relentlessly persevered. After a few days, they managed to assemble a few thousand men and returned for a fight wielding hoes, rakes, rocks, and branches. although their clash was a mess and utter defeat with over half of those few thousand dead. It wasn't fruitless. Long Ying made it into a tower and returned holding several large bags of grains and bundles of real weapons. There may have been serious casualties, but that just created a will to fight to the death among the people. Their nature was closer to that of bandits now. They raided once, twice, thrice. The soldiers of Xianle soon discovered that the tactics of those bandits were rapidly improving. Okay, so we are already on like desperation that is driving them into doing these things. And already they've suffered quite a few injuries and losses. But it's still pretty bleak. The outlook for Yong'an right now is pretty bleak. So what is the turning point? Again, I think it's got to be the plague. But also, judging by the title of this chapter, LIAN is going to involve himself more in this before the plague happens. Why? Why do you see a need to do this, is what I'm wondering. The initially inexperienced rioters gradually got the hang of things, and every time they attacked, they were more difficult to deal with than the last. The number who returned to camp alive increased with every attempt. There were also endless waves of new refugees joining the cause after hearing the news, and the group grew significantly in size. How to best deal with those bandits became the hottest topic for debate within the Kingdom of Xianle, and after 5 or 6 such ridiculous guerrilla attacks, LIAN could no longer sit still on the parapet and simply watch from the sidelines. He hadn't reported to the heavens in a long time, but this time, when he arrived at the heavenly capital, he dashed straight to the Palace of Divine Might. Oh my gosh, are we seeing Zhenwu finally? Fucking hell. He's really been gone from this narrative, from the past narrative, for like too long. So he dashed straight to the Palace of Divine Might without a word. When he barged in, Zhenwu was seated on his throne. A group of heavenly officials seemed to be discussing an important matter and were bowing to receive his command. In the past, LIAN would have chosen a different day to pay this visit, but at the moment he had no time to spare. He cut right in. "My lord, I'm returning to the mortal realm." Oh my lord. That was quick, LIAN. That was very quick. The heavenly officials were startled. They immediately covered their mouths, keeping silent, not wanting to show any kind of reaction. Zhenwu looked at him knowingly for a moment, then rose from his throne to speak to him gently. "Xianle, I have an idea of what is happening, but you must remain calm." "My lord, I didn't come here to request permission. I came here to inform you," LIAN said. "My people are currently mired in the depths of hell, so please forgive me if I cannot remain calm." "The world has its own destiny," Zhenwu said. "Do you not realize that if you descend and appear before mortals, it will be a violation of heavenly law?" "If it's a violation, then so be it," LIAN cried. At this, the faces of the heavenly officials changed color. Never had a heavenly official dared to speak such words with so much gusto and so unapologetically. No matter how highly Zhenwu regarded this young, early ascended prince of Xianle, it was still an act of great audacity. A moment later, LIAN bowed. "Pray, my lord, let me go this once. Just give me a little time. Since fighting has started, casualties are unavoidable, but if I can stop this and reduce the number of dead, minimize the conflict, then after the war ends, I will return willingly to repent, and my lord can sentence me as he sees fit. Whether I should be sealed under a mountain for 100 years, 1,000 years, 100,000 years, I will not regret it." Oh no. The fucking mountain. Yeah, we know that's how heaven deals with ghosts at least. So why not heavenly officials as well? So we have a couple of things going on here. We have, Junwoo saying that this will be a violation of heavenly law. Which again, I'm questioning Junwoo. Who wrote the laws? Did you write the laws? Did someone else write the laws before you? Because so far, like, I understand why a law such as this would exist. In fact, it probably exists because of what LIAN is saying right now. But I'm just throwing it out there. We don't actually know who decided upon all these laws. Because I gotta say, the one where LIAN is not allowed to, talk to his parents when he was 17 and ascended is pretty shit. Literally this child who's just not allowed to talk to his parents at such a young age. He did, he went to bed. He didn't ask to be ascended that very day. That was, not his plan, even though it was the universe's plan. So why would he not be allowed to talk to his family while they're still alive? Oh my lord. Like, he was gonna outlive them anyway. But then there is the second thing, which is LIAN really trying to save a life by minimizing the impact of the drought. I can understand. But what exactly are you trying to do here? You want to descend, and you're saying, since fighting has started, casualties are unavoidable. But if I can stop this and reduce the number of dead, minimize the conflict, how exactly are you planning to do that? Because that's just really not something that is easily done in this situation. And I'm going to read on and see what this is all about. But what I'm reading right now is, honestly, it's the first time I'm going, whoa. LIAN, stop. Because I can understand wanting to protect people, but from what we know of the prologue as well, like, LIAN is going to be joining the war on the side of Xianle. Presumably, your actions and your decisions are going to get the Yong'an people, several of them, killed. Casualties are unavoidable. Is this seriously... LIAN has never been in a war. You would not know what to do here, and you would not be able to solve this. Like LIAN, you have not experienced war. This is not the table you should be taking a seat at. Anyway, so after having his say, he remained in that bowing posture and stood down, leaving the great hall. "Xianle!" Junwoo called. LIAN paused in his step. Junwoo gazed at him, then sighed. "You cannot save everyone." LIAN slowly straightened up. "I won't know until I've tried. Even if the heavens say I must die, if that sword doesn't pierce my heart and nail me dead to the ground, then I am still alive, and I will struggle to my last breath." God. Yeah, that you did end up nailed to the ground eventually. Gosh, LIAN, that's the backshadowing foreshadowing is happening again. Where we're talking about things that are going to happen in the future, that happened in the future in the book already. It's it's kind of funny. Like, it feels like foreshadowing, but it already happened. And again, I understand the desire to want to save everyone here, but this is already, as I see it, a wicked problem, as are a lot of societal and political problems like the one we're presented with in the Xianle case. And there are so many factors here that are beyond your control, LIAN. And I'll probably bring this up in a discussion at a later point. But the whole thing about a wicked problem in this sense is that there is no one solution, and every solution only hacks away at a small part of it. You're never going to be able to solve this. It's going to be ongoing. It's such a, it's not going to be good, is what I'm trying to say. But I'm going to leave that for when I'm a little bit more, awake and at it. I just want to know a little bit more about what is happening. This is gonna be a short read today, I think, but I just want to know, guys. I just want to know. Forgive me my lack of focus. I'm gonna continue now. Returning to the mortal realm in solid form was unlike all the previous times he had descended. Okay, solid form. So descending before was different. Okay, this is more serious then. LIAN felt like something had been abandoned. He felt light and at the same time heavy. His first action was to return to the palace at once. The king and queen were in the imperial study whispering to each other, their faces grave and exhausted. LIAN approached the door nervously at first, but then he calmed himself, raised the curtain and walked in. Father! The king and the queen both looked back at the same time in shock. It was the queen who stood up first, crying joyously. My son! She extended both her hands and came forward to welcome him. LIAN caught her arms, accepting the gesture, but before the smiles went away, he saw the king's expression growing darker. Why have you descended? The king demanded. LIAN's smile froze. Yeah. I don't know what's going to come next, but my first thought is LIAN's dad, despite, having a turbulent relationship with LIAN and appearing quite cold, from the conversation he's had with LIAN's mother before and from his actions with, building these temples, I feel like his dad is, he's been doing these things, setting LIAN up for success as, an immortal ascended god, kind of because he knows that things have been going to shit. This drought has been happening for years, and other things that the king would probably be aware of would probably hint to something like this happening, So my impression is that he's actually, wanted LIAN to live this immortal life, to not be a part of this anymore. And now LIAN is kind of going against all that by descending and by involving himself, because that is who LIAN is. So I can definitely understand the king's perspective in this as well. Okay, so LIAN's smile froze. Before, when he heard his parents talk about him behind his back, LIAN had thought that his father might miss him and wasn't as biased against him as it always seemed. He had thought that the king would show at least some degree of pleasure in seeing his return, and that he would surely soften his attitude. How could he expect that the king would react this way, so full of scorn? LIAN's own temper flared. I don't know, I kind of like that LIAN has a temper, actually. Why have I descended? Isn't it all because of you? He replied sharply. Shouldn't you ask yourself whether you bear responsibility for the situation with Yong'an coming to this? Oh, LIAN. Oh, LIAN. There are factors outside of what your daddy dearest could do here. Though, yes, some of these factors are indeed connected to the king and his decisions. Others are beyond his control. At least at this point, and at any point in the past 3 years. But I keep getting ahead of myself. I need to keep reading so that I can understand what is actually going on here. The king's face completely changed and he countered harshly. My responsibility? Is that something you can say to me? His fury made him forget his royal plurals, and the queen teared up. His royal plurals? As in the way they were addressing each other? I'm not sure. The situation is as bad as can be, so why are you two arguing? We're not arguing, LIAN said. We're talking about basic logic. Even if you are the king and my father, if you are the one responsible, why can't I say anything? Why didn't you work harder on disaster relief? If the aid money was completely swallowed by government checkpoints, why didn't you punish the corrupt officials? If you were fierce like thunder and fast like lightning, jailing them all with no exceptions, then would there still be so many parasites who dare steal? Wouldn't things be better than they are now? Except it sounds very simple, it sounds very straightforward, but every ruler is dependent on certain key players, be it a king or a president or even a dictator. You are pretty dependent on certain key players in your government structure. And if they have over time set themselves up to be essential in some way, controlling certain aspects of your governance, like it's not that easy to just remove corrupted officials. And this certainly is another area where LIAN has no expertise whatsoever. Like he really sounds like a 20-year-old right now. Veins popped on the king's forehead and he banged on his bureau desk. Quiet! Do you think the royal treasury is a bottomless well that can fix any leaking hole? Jail them all as if it were that easy. If by just one order from this king it would work fast like lightning, fierce asunder, then why has history never seen a dynasty untouched by corruption? What logic do you know? You ignorant child. You dare speak politics with me? Fine, LIAN acquiesced. I don't understand, but even if the imperial capital had no room for the victims to settle and their expulsion was inevitable, why not provide more for them? Why not appease them properly and have an army escort them on their journey eastward? The king's eyes bulged with rage, and he pointed to the sky. Be gone! Get out of here! Get back to the heavens! Just looking at you annoys me. Don't ever appear here again! Oh my lord, this is a lot more intense than I thought this meeting was going to be. LIAN had descended with a heart full of fervor, yet the reunion with his parents ended with his father yelling and sending him back to the heavens. Without a word, LIAN gave a curt bow and stood down to leave the imperial study. The queen chased after him as he left and pulled him to a stop. My son! Mother, don't worry, LIAN said gently. I'm just going to walk around the imperial capital to check on the situation. The queen shook her head. My son, I don't understand these political matters, but I understand your father. Throughout the years, I've seen how he is as a king. You can think from the bottom of your heart that he isn't competent, and sometimes I think the same, even if I don't say it out loud. But you can't say that to his face. He's your father, after all. It's devastating to hear you say that he's been neglectful. LIAN opened and closed his mouth. The queen added, You might have been the crown prince, but you have never been king. Ruling a nation is different from cultivating. When you first entered the royal holy temple, the state preceptor said cultivation only concerns the heart. Isn't that right? LIAN nodded slowly, and the queen clutched his hands. But there are many times in this world when just having heart isn't enough. You must be capable too, and not just you, but your subordinates as well. They must match you in ability and also share your hearts. Sudden Xianle trio feels, oh my god. LIAN remained silent. After a moment he asked, Is the royal treasury suffering? I don't need temples. Tell them to stop building so many for me. Those golden statues can go. My child, the queen replied helplessly. Of course your father's bias is showing a little in building temples. He wanted to give you the best and to make you look impressive in the heavens. But you know just how many of those 8,000 temples were actually built by your father? You don't know, do you? LIAN really didn't know, and he pondered briefly. Half? If your father really used funds from the royal treasury to build 4,000 temples, we wouldn't need to wait for the Yong'an refugees to start anything. The imperial capital would revolt first, the queen said. So if the royal treasury is empty, where do you think all that money came from? Your father built maybe 20 temples, and others followed suit. Masses of them wanting to build to curry his favor, to curry your favor. Is that counted among your father's failures too? LIAN was stumped. So am I. Though, yeah, that it definitely makes sense that, yeah, in 3 years, the king would commission maybe 20-ish temples. And for, the rest of the temples to be a common effort of all the Xianle people who, they witnessed an ascension. So yeah, they would want to build these temples, and some would build them in order to curry favor with Shulian's father, the king. And then you have, everything from these temples down to the little shrines that are just grassroots things built by general people, regular people who wants a place to pray. So yeah, that definitely makes sense. The queen said softly, "Your father isn't the greatest king, but he's done his best. Only, in this world, simply doing your best isn't good enough." After a pause, she added, "Right now, you feel sympathy for those Yong'an refugees, so you blame your father. But they're all his people. Do you think we're the ones bullying them? In truth," halfway through her words, the enraged voice of the king echoed from the study. "What are you doing, telling him so many useless things? Make him leave and go back to the heavens." The queen turned back to him and sighed. "My son, don't descend for this. Go back." And yeah, that they're kind of right about that. Don't descend for this, Shulian. He's going to, because this is it. This is the turning point. This is the turning point. And I understand that, and no matter how much we are lingering on this path, it's gonna happen anyway. I feel like I'm just stalling. I know it's gonna happen, and I know I'm gonna be so conflicted about it, which is why, I'm stalling so much. But to summarize this scene, we are seeing Shulian's parents beg him not to descend for this, basically. Like, yeah, the king in his very, way. But the king and the queen are both saying the same thing. And what they want is for Shulian, their son, to thrive outside of these complicated issues. And there seems to be more underlying things here that the queen is trying to tell Shulian about, but she got interrupted, so that's probably going to pop up. We'll have a look at that as soon as that pops up again. After leaving the palace, Shulian wandered down an alleyway near the Grand Avenue of Divine Might. As he walked, Fengxian and Muqing appeared in a rush. The moment Muqing approached, he asked in disbelief, "Your Highness, you requested to descend to the mortal realm. You spoke to the Heavenly Emperor." "Yes," Shulian answered. "Why didn't you tell me first?" Muqing demanded. "What do you mean?" Fengxian asked, puzzled. "When he wants to do something, does His Highness have to report to anyone?" Muqing seemed to be losing it. "Why shouldn't he? We're his subordinates, and right now we're all tied together. His every action affects us. So is there something wrong with me wanting to know his plans? We'd have to follow His Highness, no matter what he does. Heaven or earth, he goes his own way. So what are you afraid of?" Fengxian said. Muqing cut himself off in frustration. "I'm not afraid. I'm only..." Shulian waved. "Enough. Stop arguing." Fengxian and Muqing quieted immediately. Okay. Yeah, just another example of their personalities at the moment, where Fengxian is just going to follow Shulian on whatever path he might take. Whereas Muqing seems to feel a little bit, betrayed that he's not been talked to about this, that he's not had the chance to give his opinion about this, and I can understand that as well. And I actually kind of love that comment, are you afraid? What are you afraid of? And Muqing's reply being immediately, "I'm not afraid," because it gives that hint of that kind of competitiveness in a sense. But yes, in this case, Fengxian, really. This is, I'm with Muqing on this one. So anyways, they quieted, and just then a crowd of demonstrators paraded down the main streets in a long line, thousands of citizens hollering, "There will be no peace in the kingdom until Yong'an is exterminated." Oh my god. "They've gone too far, they've created too much disorder, they're a cancer." The people of Xianle had never been so aggressive about anything, nor had they ever engaged in such a roaring protest. Shulian couldn't help but think something was amiss. Fengxian, on the other hand, frowned. "How come there's a woman in there?" Sure enough, at the forefront of that crowd marched a young woman. She was slender, her skin snow white, her eyes bright and black, her cheeks flushed not from shyness but from rage, an eye-catching sight. Okay, who's this person? Someone important? And also, function? By then, WUXIANG had calmed himself down. His Highness doesn't recognize her? He asked coldly. No, LIAN replied. Function knitted his brows. She looks a bit familiar. She's one of the catalysts, WUXIANG said. What catalysts? LIAN asked. The catalysts for this standoff, WUXIANG replied. Because he's on top of these things. He knows who the key players are. He knows what's going on here. Just saying, Function and LIAN alone without WUXIANG, they'd be so lost. Before, when there were more and more Yong'an refugees surging into the capital, some wouldn't quietly mind their own business and went around causing trouble. The court was discussing the matter of expulsion, and word of it was spreading. There was a Yong'an refugee who wanted to avoid being expelled, so he decided to take a risk. One night, he snuck into the house of a wealthy family and kidnapped their daughter. This woman? LIAN couldn't wrap his head around this. Why would he kidnap a rich family's daughter if he didn't want to leave? WUXIANG gave him a look. To marry her. The only way a daughter from a good family in the imperial capital would marry a man of Yong'an would be by force. He didn't say it plainly, but LIAN understood. He had never thought that there were actually people out there who would do such a thing, that something like that could happen. A sudden wave of nausea rolled up from his chest. Disgusting! Function cursed angrily on the spot. Just then, a group of aunties rushed over, grabbing and pulling at the young woman. By the looks of it, she had snuck out when her family wasn't paying attention. That young woman wouldn't yield, yelling, I'm not afraid! I have nothing to be ashamed of! I wasn't in the wrong! That chick's pretty spunky, Function said, amazed. Function? Okay, first of all, chick as slang in my Danmei novels, it's more likely than you think. But also, Function complimenting a woman that isn't, a mother figure to him. Good on you, Function. Giving a compliment and not running away in fear. We're getting somewhere here. Yes, WUXIANG replied. She didn't come from an ordinary background. Her father is a high-ranking official, and her mother hails from a family of wealthy merchants in the capital. They refused to suffer this quietly, and definitely wouldn't marry off their daughter, for shame's sake, so they beat that young man to death. Soon after, all the wealthy merchants and gentlemen of renown in the capital signed a petition that listed every crime the Yong'an refugees had committed since entering the city and demanded that the king jail all of them and have them severely punished. There's no need to explain where the government officials stand on this. He paused briefly, then said with a casual air, I hear the girl's father once wanted her to enter the harem and fight for the position of the prince's consort. Your Highness must have seen her face a few times long ago. I'm surprised you don't recognize her. I'm not surprised. WUXIANG, this man is obsessed with swords. By which I mean, LIAN finally realized that everything was much more complicated than he had imagined. There were two sides to this tumultuous standoff. The people were furious, and each side desperately wanted to kill the other. If the king's decree was partial to Yong'an, wasn't that a slap in the face to his own people? When at last he decided to distribute some aid from the royal treasury to the Yong'an refugees, it probably displeased many of the city's residents. Even more frightening than a displeased enemy was the dissatisfaction of a kingdom's own people. While technically everyone was of Xianle, there were probably very few who believed that now. For so long, LIAN had been standing on high, unaware of all the problems of the mortal realm. However, his father was still in it. As a king, he needed money. He needed people, and in his position, the stress, the pressure, and the compromises he needed to make to solve the problems of his citizens were incomparable to the troubles Sholian knew. When the Yong'an refugees arrived, they took over land, made a racket, stole things, and so on. To a martial guard sitting in a temple, these were all small matters that did not call for such fury. Simply endure it, and it will pass. However, to the residents of the capital, these were all very real, unmanageable, intolerable tortures, a crisis waiting to erupt. It was only because he wasn't in the thick of it that he could consider these matters simple or trivial. Sholian couldn't help but recall that the king's hair had gone even whiter than the last time he had seen him. Last time, the king had said he was going to dye it, but he probably didn't have the energy to care anymore. When Sholian was younger, he firmly believed that his father was the world's greatest king. But the older he got, the more he realized that wasn't the case. Although his father was king, he couldn't be called a wise or competent one. He was even a little corrupt and made mistakes often. Without his prestigious status, he was nothing more than a common mortal man. The more Sholian realized this, the more displeased he became. The king noticed his disappointment and could not accept every disagreeing look, every disagreeing word from Sholian. What he couldn't accept above all, however, was having Sholian see his failures. No father in the world wanted his son to see his failures. Every father wanted his son to see him as the greatest, yet Sholian had appeared before him at a terrible time just to berate him. "You're making such a mess of things that I had to descend to help you out." As both a king and a father, how could he withstand hearing that? And there is some truth in this as well. I feel like a lot of these conversations and thoughts are about, establishing all the different viewpoints of the characters involved here, which in turn serves to rebuilding and restructuring Sholian's worldview, which is really what this part of the story is about. And it's hard. And this also is part of, perhaps why the king, as well as the state preceptor, tried to keep all of these things from Sholian. Anyway, moving on. The young woman was finally hustled away by her servants, and the hundreds of other demonstrating residents continued their protests, waving signs and hollering. They were crying for only one thing. "Kill them! Open fire! Show those Yong'an refugees crawling around outside the walls!" A moment later, Muqing spoke up. "Your Highness, at this point it would be best to go back and apologize to the Heavenly Emperor. Favorable time and place and conditions, it's all lost. There's no helping this." It was just as Junwu had told him at the Palace of Divine Might. The world has its own destiny. But that was no different from telling him that the kingdom of Xianle's time had come to an end and to let it go. Even the queen, his mother, who wished day and night to be granted only a glimpse of him, asked him to leave with tears in her eyes when she finally saw him. How could Sholian not understand that they simply didn't want him to go through this difficult trial? That they'd rather he just take care of himself and watch from afar? But how could he? After a long silence, Sholian gravely declared, "No," and he strode out. And that was the end of chapter 34. Yeah, listening to myself and what I end up saying while reading this, I think maybe I'm very overprotective of Sholian. It's so easy for me to empathize with what his parents are trying to do here, and at the same time, I love his idealism. And up until now, that's been fine. Like all the like him trying to figure out how to help the people of Yong'an with the drought and everything. That's fine. But we are moving into a territory where LIAN has no expertise, and his only upper hand is being a god, a martial god, who is really good at the martial god thing. At least the martial aspect of it. Like, my predictions here is that him descending, you know, he will be the best soldier in the army, you know? Like, he can handle quite a bit of that, the fighting, you know, but then there's the death, the dying, and the realities of a conflict like this. Like, LIAN is basically saying, I have to do something, and I will accept violence as a consequence of this. As he tells John Woo, casualties will happen because the fighting has already started. And just, yeah, I don't think this is good. And this chapter is another setup chapter. We get to hear from both the King of Xianle, the Queen of Xianle, and the Royal Heavenly Father himself. The only person we haven't gotten to hear from in a bit now is the State Preceptor, and I'm suspecting that's gonna come up at some point soon, because he's still around, right? We don't have any hints of him disappearing anytime recently. And, you know, of course, we have to inspire little Honghong-er to join God's little army, I suppose. And because I'm a little bit more exhausted than I want to be right now, but I also felt like nothing fun and exciting really happened. Like, it's just a build-up chapter with some important information, some important things, and some important emotions. We basically get to see, I think, LIAN getting more desperate. And also encountering some new realities, some truths that are already changing his perspective a little bit. But it's too little too late, because he has already decided on the sending, and yeah. And we all agree that that was probably not a good idea. But you know what? I will pay the price. I will let baby LIAN pay the price, 20-year-old LIAN pay the price, so that I can have this in the future. I am ready to suffer bad decisions, because it will lead to this. I can do this. I can do this, guys. Because really, how bad of a decision is it if this is where we end up? Honestly, let him do his thing. Let him descend. Let him kill some people. Oh my lord, who knows what's gonna happen? It's gonna be insane, is what it's gonna be. But at this point, that's fine. That's fine. Because we'll get the 800 years later reunion, and it's splendid. Convert to WUXIANism today. You guys are right. Thinking about WUXIAN in 800 years really makes everything better. And because I know that the next two chapters are quite short, I'm going to jump into them as well and hopefully finish at a good point. Like, I talked a little bit in the server with some people, and we kind of said that, well, 36 would be a nice session to reach chapter 36 would be a nice session. But before we can get there, let's do chapter 35. Quell Yong'an, Crown Prince enters the battlefield. We're already on the battlefield, guys. We're already on the battlefield. Behind him, both Fengchen and Muqing were in shock. Your Highness, they cried, and immediately rushed out to stand guard next to him. However, the citizens on the Grand Avenue of Divine Might had already seen the young man in white who appeared right at the center of the main street. The protesters were broken up, but soon rallied, and a crowd of thousands soon surrounded LIAN. The first person spoke, unsure. My lord, is His Highness the Crown Prince? The second one was doubtful. Didn't His Highness the Crown Prince ascend? He's no longer mortal, so why would he appear to us here? The third one yelled. It's him! 3 years ago, at the heavenly ceremonial procession, I saw him with my own eyes. It's His Highness the Crown Prince. More and more people began to recognize the face of that martial god they worship day and night, and Lian answered them slowly. It is I have returned. The people went wild. Oh, fuck. A god descended, a god really descended. A divine being has returned to the mortal realm. Your Highness must have returned because you could no longer tolerate seeing us suffer the abuse of those thieves. Many pressed on, full of hope. Your Highness, will my lord lead us to drive out those Yong'an interlopers? It's for certain, right? It must be so. After a pause, Lian answered calmly. I have returned to protect the kingdom of Xianle, to protect my people. Fengxin and Muqing listened to him intently as they stood by his side, but they couldn't be sure what exactly those words meant. Yet the citizens whose minds were addled by hot blood interpreted them as they wished. As for Lian, he had his own concerns. His heart was racing faster and faster, and he gritted his teeth. Believe in me! He clenched his fists and cried. Your belief will grant me greater power. With this power, I promise I will shield Xianle with my life and protect the common people. Please believe in me. The people had been waiting for this very moment. All they wanted was that pledge. They erupted in fervent cheers and kneeled to prostrate themselves in a circle that fanned outward. Kneeling and prostrating, it's a symbol. It's symbolism here as well. That's never what Lian wanted. And yet, here they are, when he is, actually descended as a god, doing this very thing. It's a great symbolism, actually. We will follow my lord to the end of the earth. We'll follow your highness. Protect Xianle. When the residents of the imperial capital heard that a god had descended upon them, they all poured out into the streets, if only to witness the sort of miracle that wouldn't appear even once in 1,000 years. Even the capital guards, who had hurried over to address the chaos, didn't dare to be impudent. They joined the prostrating crowd. The three of them were stuck in the middle of the main street, unable to move, and Fengxin and Muqing tried to maintain order, shouting as they did so. Don't push! Stop pushing! However, they weren't effective. Everyone wanted to jostle closer to His Highness the Crown Prince and touch even just a sleeve corner of this divine god from heaven, so some of his holiness would rub off on them. Finally, the king was alerted, and it took several generals leading fully armed soldiers to break up the fervent crowd. When everyone was gone, all that was left behind was dust-filled air and messy footprints littering the ground. Lian noticed something, and he bent down to pick it up. It was a single flower. After being trampled by so many, it was almost the color of the dirt below. Only a few ripped petals remained, with just a little of their original purity peeking through. That faint fragrance didn't last, it soon dispersed. And that comes with a footnote, a reference to a verse from Lu You's Ode to the Plum Blossom, which I have heard mentioned before in a poem somewhere, or in a comment somewhere, or in the book somewhere. Her petals may be ground in the mud, but her fragrance will endure. This verse was also referenced during the earlier sequence at the Shengyuan Heavenly Ceremonial Procession, and here it serves as an ironic echo. I see. Okay, yeah, I remembered this ode to the plum blossom, and apparently that was during volume 2. It was from volume 2, from a footnote earlier. But yes, where did the flower come from? Where did the flower come from? Now that he understood things a bit better, when Lian returned to the palace, his temper was much softer toward the king. In turn, the king was also far more agreeable toward him. Since they both took a step back, father and son established a tentative peace between them. As for the state preceptor, here he is, paying extra attention to this part. It seemed he already expected LIAN to dissent, so he didn't comment much on the subject. In the past, LIAN had always believed that the nation shared one heart, and that in the face of a serious issue, everyone would undoubtedly follow the direction of the king. That was only natural. However, when he actually sat down to participate, he finally learned just how vexing the position of a king really was. At court, the officials were split into small factions, and each faction had its own plans. To come to an agreement on any one matter could take up to 7 days of endless debate. Every official and every faction proclaimed that they were working for the people, but one couldn't help but suspect that might not be entirely true. Yeah, so LIAN finally getting a little bit of court politics, I suppose. Like, he might have been, so young when he started cultivating that he was never really, brought up inside the actual, debates that go on between a king and his government in this setting. I'm basing a lot of what I know of Eastern kingdoms on K-dramas, so more Korean-based again. But as that model of rule, a lot of the same ideas came and originated in China. I'm guessing it might not be too difficult from what I'm imagining. But anyway, the officials were painfully slow at finding a consensus on how to deal with the Yong'an refugees camping outside the city, who had now officially rebelled. Some advocated for direct extermination, and if there wasn't good enough reason to do such a thing, they could simply fabricate excuses. But some disagreed with that plan. The revolt of Yong'an began with a natural disaster, but the situation deteriorated through human action. That family of 3 who fell to their deaths at the city gates was the worst catalyst imaginable. The officer who cut a rope would have been severely punished upon his returning to the palace if his neck hadn't been snapped by Ying. To put it bluntly, no matter how convoluted the circumstances, no matter the reason, on the surface it seemed like a straightforward case of the common people rightfully rebelling against an oppressive authority. Now that things had devolved to the present point of complete pandemonium, fabricating more crimes to punish would only provoke further disgust, and whatever reason they used to justify them would not work to deceive the people. But if they simply deployed an army to exterminate the refugees, it'd be without a just cause, and would destroy any illusion of benevolent authority. Preventing gossip was just as important as preventing floods. Once the reputation for insensible cruelty was established, not only would the government lose the trust of its people, nearby kingdoms could seize the opportunity to invade under the pretense of eradicating a great evil. However, thinking about it from a different angle, what was there to be afraid of? The Yong'an refugees were squatting in the wilderness with neither food nor arms, so how long could the revolt last? Thus, the most popular proposal in the end was this: if the Yong'an refugees dare attack, they shall be repelled and killed each time. If they don't, then they shall be left to their own devices to survive or die. Xianle wouldn't need to waste a single resource, and the people of Yong'an would be left to exhaust themselves. As a martial god, LIAN's descent naturally meant he had to demonstrate his worth on the battlefield, so it stood to reason that the army vigorously played up their cause. The side of His Highness the Crown Prince was the side of justice. Of course, this mentality came up. The army of His Highness the Crown Prince was the army of God. Yeah, God's army. This wasn't much of a prediction, but I knew this was coming. All of a sudden, countless young men across the entire kingdom excitedly enlisted. Oh. And in a few short days, the size of the Xianle army exploded exponentially. It caused such a stir that the news of it must have reached the Yong'an camp. They had been regularly raiding in small groups, but suddenly everything stopped. Ominous, as if they'd grown weary and were silently building their strength. This made the soldiers in Xianle nervous, and over they described to LIAN just how terrifying that Long Ying was, the man who was always on the front lines. The sound of his name and the memory of the infant's dead body always brought up complicated feelings for LIAN. After 2 long months of waiting with bated breath, the Yong'an refugees finally launched another attack. LIAN only brought a short sword and didn't even wear any armor. The battle ended in under 2 hours. Blood stained everything. From the earth to the sky to the reeking air itself, the remaining Yong'an warriors abandoned their gear and retreated frantically. Before the Xianle soldiers could react, they were already surrounded by countless slain bodies. There was not a single enemy left standing. As for His Highness, the Crown Prince, he was slowly sheathing his sword without so much as a stain on his sleeves. Yeah, he killed him. Shit. We killed him. There's no coming back from that one. Wow. Yeah. Oh, LIAN. Oh, LIAN. It was a moment before they could comprehend their own overwhelming victory. They jumped and raised their swords to the sky, screaming themselves hoarse in joy. That night, the Xianle soldiers held a victory feast atop the towers. It had been a long time since the soldiers had felt this proud and elated, and the cheers were endless as they raised their cups to praise His Highness the Crown Prince. However, LIAN rejected the wine, and he left the party to go to the far corner of the tower by himself to feel the breeze and sober up. Even though he didn't drink a single cup of wine, he could still feel his heart burning, his face flushed with heat, and his fingertips trembling slightly. This was the first time in LIAN's life that he had killed. The very first time he had killed thousands. Ants. The fucking ant imagery. The ant imagery. I feel like I've heard this before. I mean, aside from... there's the one with WUXIANG and the elephant crushing the ants. But where I've heard this before, aside from that and aside from the attendant who crushed the ants when LIAN was a child. I just can't remember. I just know that this imagery has popped up before. Where was that? You're gonna have to help me out. If you know what the ants are about, let me know. Let me know in the comments. Where have we heard this before? Ants. The word kept appearing in his mind. Before his might, mortals fell with a single blow. He could destroy them with even a single light squeeze. It was so easy to steal another's life. Just as that palace attendant, which I remembered, had stomped on the ants. He had almost lost his heart for reverence in between the swings of his sword. LIAN leaned against the parapet and drew in a few deep breaths, shaking his head to shake off the noise. and he stared absent-mindedly at a flickering of sparks in the far mountains. Soon after, the sound of footfalls approached. Even without turning his head, he knew who it was. "Aren't you two going to drink and celebrate a little?" LIAN asked. WUXIANG humphed. "What's there to celebrate? The situation doesn't look good." Hearing that, LIAN turned around. "You guys noticed too?" There really wasn't anything to be optimistic about. Even though they won this round, the truth was this attack was stronger than any previous Yong'an attacks. Not only had their numbers increased, their formation, weapons, management, everything had improved significantly. Many of them were even dressed in armor. Although still simple and crude, it was obvious they had already had the makings of a formal army. It was hard to believe they were actually outcast nobodies. WUXIANG crossed his arms and frowned. Extreme environments certainly force one to improve rapidly, but no matter how difficult the situation, you can't create resources out of nothing. Something's not right. They're being funded. They're being funded by someone. Like another nation, like a country that's like Xianle's enemy? Something like that. Fengxian was even more straightforward and said plainly, "They must have gotten reinforcements." Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Fengxian. LIAN nodded. "I don't believe that none of our soldiers noticed either," WUXIANG added. "But they're still celebrating because they have you on their side. They believe it's a sure victory." LIAN didn't think much of that. "It's the first battle I was involved in and we won. It's fine to let them enjoy it a bit. Just think of it as improving morale." Though he hesitated briefly. Fengxian still asked in the end, "Your Highness, you don't look so good." "Are you still creating rain in Yong'an?" "Yeah," LIAN replied. Damn, boy. You're really stretching yourself thin here." As expected, disapproval appeared on WUXIANG's face. "Excuse my bluntness, but it's pointless to create rain now. That's the real bottomless hole, Your Highness. Even if the drought in Yong'an could be entirely relieved, that crowd outside the city walls probably wouldn't back off." Which is true, however, that's like the one part of what LIAN is doing right now that is actually, following the golden rule, as in it relieves the situation and doesn't hurt anyone. Solve it entirely, no, but... "I know," LIAN said. "But my reign isn't meant to make these people retreat. It's for those who remain in Yong'an to make sure they don't die of thirst. That was my original goal, and I won't change it for anything." That was the original goal that was actually, a good one. I believe that what LIAN did in this part did help. It helps a little for the people who are still in Yong'an. But, oh my lord, this thing? Joining the war efforts? Killing thousands? Oh, my heart hurts. Fengxian was still worried. "Can you really keep this up?" LIAN patted his shoulder. "Don't worry, I have 8,000 temples. There are plenty of devotees, so I'm fine, of course, but..." His other arm circled around WUXIANG's shoulders, and LIAN sighed. "Thank goodness you two helped today. Thank you for staying by my side." That day on the battlefield, his two subordinates suffered much more than he did. They were absolutely covered in blood and grime from all the killing. "There's no need to say such things," Fengxian said, and WUXIANG gave a non-committal grunt. This is a kind of depressing part to see them so in sync, but... LIAN squeezed the other two close and said earnestly, "Not just for today, but for always. Thank you both so much. I hope the sight of the three of us standing tall and fighting together will inspire a story for the ages. To Ellipsy replies from Fengxian and Muqing. A moment later, Fengxian burst out laughing, while Muqing said incredulously, "How do you always say such things with such shameless confidence? You're really..." He shook his head. "Never mind." Lian's lips finally curled up, but the smile didn't last long and he suddenly froze. "Who's there?" "Xing." Lian's sword was unsheathed. With a light flick of his blade, he plucked a shadow from the corner of the parapet. "Is it Lang Ying?" The person had been hiding in the corner for a long time, holding his breath, and had surprisingly gone unnoticed until now. Lian had only intended to scare him by hanging him off the tip of his sword, but he had killed too aggressively on the battlefield that day. His arms were still shaking and his hands lost control. His simple flick was too powerful, and he threw the person right over the wall. Oh shoot, that's probably not Lang Ying then. Under the moonlight, all three of them were able to see clearly that the person's uniform and gear were that of their own army. Lian, did you just yeet someone off the wall? And he himself looked like a boy. Oh, maybe 14 or 15, oh no. The boy hung in midair for a moment, and one breath later, his form disappeared as he plummeted towards the ground below. "Oh no," Lian cried internally, and he leapt out. As he dove over the edge, he hooked his foot onto the edge of the parapet, and he swiftly reached out and managed to grab the boy's arm. The young soldier's body dangled in midair and swung back and forth a few times before he looked up. Their eyes met, and borrowing the faint moonlight, Lian was able to see his face. His eyes widened. Oh my gosh, did you recognize him, Lian? Did you recognize him? It's him. It's Soldier Honghong-er. Oh no. Oh my gosh, I finally just something like nice to end a very depressing chapter with. Oh my lord. Oh my lord. Lian's just killed like 1,000 people or something. This is I mean, with Fengxian Muqing's help, they also killed people. This is super depressing. That was a read. That was a heavy read for me, actually. That was And then to end the chapter by teasing me like this, by being like, "Oh, but here is Honghong-er." The book seems to know my weaknesses. I feel like it's completely intentional at this point. But yes, that was it. Honghong-er, 14 or 15, joining the army of Xianle. Makes sense. Knew that was happening. And we're technically back to the Xianle quartet again. I can't believe Lian yeeted Honghong-er off the wall. He did catch him again, but oh my lord. Lian. That was, is that a memory WUXIANG will ever bring up again? Because that'd be funny. I want him to keep bringing that up for forever. Remember that one time you yeeted me off the wall? This is too good. I'm actually itching to read the last chapter of this read, which is going to be chapter 36. I'm actually super tired, but I really want to finish that chapter. And now that I know it's gonna feature my boy, my baby, I have to. This is inadvisable, guys. Don't ever do this. Don't start reading a book at I don't remember when I started. It was 9 something, 9:30ish maybe, in the evening, when you also have a full-time job during the day. This was not advisable. If you're ever starting a YouTube channel where you're gonna be reading books, take my advice on this. Don't do this to yourself. You're gonna get to a book that is so exciting that you don't want to put it down, and this is gonna be what happens. I am so tired, but I can't stop. Why have I done this to myself? We're just gonna charge straight ahead, and I'm gonna do a little bit of a talk before I finish this off after chapter 36. Upon Fudge. place name in Chinese. Baizi, 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 Baizi. I'm gonna be mispronouncing this until someone will tell me how to say this. Upon Baizi Hill, the crown prince falls into the devil's nest. What is going on? What is going on? What devil's nest? The first thing I'm thinking is like the first Harry Potter book for some reason. Are we gonna go evil plants? Are we gonna go tentacles? Scratch that, oh my lord. I'm too tired for this. Let's do it. Sholian's sudden leap over the edge was certainly alarming, but his two attendants were more than aware of his capabilities. Mooching didn't bother to move, though Fengshen went over and helped pull him up. Sholian only used a little strength to pull, and the young soldier was hauled up along with him, and the two of them found their feet on the tower once more. "Who's your captain? Why are you hiding here?" Sholian asked. The young soldier's arms and head were wrapped with bandages, and there were spots of blood seeping through. It appeared he was covered in wounds. This wasn't strange, as there were many wounded soldiers all wrapped up like this after the battle today. However, hiding silently in the shadows was highly suspicious. He was just trying to catch a look, Sholian. He was just trying to look at you. "He'd better not be a Yong'an spy. Tie him up and interrogate him," Mooching advised. Sholian suspected the same, but the imperial capital was rigorously guarded, and the chances of enemies sneaking in was low, unless it was Ying. I feel very vindicated by him saying that or thinking that, because I thought that maybe Ying was up on the wall there at the end of the last chapter, until it was clear that it was Honghong-er. However, this young soldier was clearly only a child barely of age. Fengshen, though, spoke up in amazement. "Your Highness, you don't remember this brat? During the battle today, he kept charging forward, throwing himself ahead of you at the front of the formation." Honghong-er! Like, I knew he would probably do some shit like this, but Sholian, please, don't let him continue to do shit like this. "Oh, really?" Sholian said, slightly taken aback. In the midst of all the killing that today, he'd had no time to notice anything. That seems like it's a mistake. He was solely focused on striking back every time someone raised a sword against him. He hadn't even bothered with Fengshen and Mooching, so how could he notice some little soldier? Some little soldier, that's your future husband, Sholian. Fengshen was sure. "It's him, I remember this brat. His charge was quite aggressive, like he didn't care about his life at all." Hearing this, Sholian scrutinized this young soldier carefully. For some reason, the boy stood taller, his shoulders squared and head raised, as if he was a little stiff, but also like he was standing at attention. "Even so, he shouldn't be sneaking around and hiding here," Mooching remarked. "Who knows if he's a spy or eavesdrop?" Despite his words, he still relaxed his guard, because he doesn't really believe that. Due to the Xianle military's campaign promoting their holy crusade of the army of God, there were quite a few young people who enlisted just to follow Sholian. Many just as young as this boy. Most were loyal devotees who grew up worshipping his divine statues and listening to his tales of valor. Grew up? It's only been like 3 years, come on. Though I suppose, yeah, I suppose. They all wanted to sneak close, if only to steal a glimpse of the martial god. It wasn't the first or even the second time something like this had happened, so it wasn't anything special. "All right, it was a false alarm," Sholian said, then turned to the young soldier and said warmly, "I must have scared you just now. Sorry." Yet the boy didn't look frightened and only stood straighter. "Your Highness!" He trailed off and suddenly lunged at Sholian. And Sholian thought the boy was trying to ambush him and sidestepped immediately to dodge, his hand raised and ready to chop down. He's just trying to hug you, Shirley. With his might, just one strike would kill the boy on the spot, but just then he felt a rush of cold air behind him. His hand changed tracks abruptly, his wrist twisted, and he caught a sniping arrow that had been aimed at his back. Oh, he wasn't trying to hug him. I thought he was trying to do like a 10-year-old Honghong-er and just grab onto him like a monkey again. But he was going for, it's the arrow, right? He was going for the arrow. Oh my lord. Hwa-chang. Honghong-er! It turned out that boy had tried to tackle him because he had seen the glint of the arrow flying through the air. LIAN had been leaning against the wall of the parapet at first, but even after being attacked from behind, he wasn't scared in the slightest. He jumped onto the wall to look downward. In the vast fields before the city gates, he could faintly see the lone figure of a man standing in the far distance. Since he wore dark-colored clothing and blended into the night, he was difficult to spot. Feng-Shen was instantly at LIAN's side. He drew his bow and shot. However, it seemed that the man had already calculated the distance and stood just out of reach. The one arrow he shot got LIAN's attention, so he waved, then turned swiftly to leave without a word. That must have been Ying, right? When Feng-Shen's arrow reached him, it was already too late, and it drove into the ground just inches behind that man's retreating feet. Furious, Feng-Shen pounded his fist on the wall, sending dust tumbling down. Who was that? Who else could it be? Ying! LIAN shouted. The Xianle soldiers had also noticed strange things afoot. Though they caused quite a stir, the soldiers retained enough caution to not immediately open the gates to give chase and instead reported to the superiors for instructions. Ying waved and left after shooting that one arrow, almost as if he had come specifically to greet LIAN. Mooching furrowed his brow. Why did he come here? As a show of strength? Yong'an was completely destroyed on the battlefield today. Feng-Shen spat angrily. And he himself barely escaped death at his highness's hands. What strength could he possibly show? LIAN, however, felt that the arrow in his hand had something tied around it. When he brought it to the firelight for further examination, he saw it was a ripped piece of cloth that seemed to come from a rich green brocade. There were traces of wet blood still on the fabric, and when he unfolded it, he found a twisted scribble of the word Qi. Green, Qi, I see his name down here, oh my lord. LIAN immediately clutched at fabric and demanded, Where is Qirong? Is Qirong not at the palace? Feng-Shen turned to the nearby soldiers. Go to the palace and confirm, quickly. The soldiers left immediately. That cloth was indeed a corner from the sleeve of Qirong's favorite robe, and Ying was known for his stealth, so there was a high probability that Qirong had been kidnapped. LIAN knew there was no time to waste. Oh my lord. Qirong kidnapped, and now we're gonna have to save him, of course. That's what's gonna have to happen. Ironic that he ends up being kidnapped, you know, after the whole scene with Ying and Qirong in that temple at the beginning of this volume. Almost poetic. I'm going after him to find out. Seeing that Feng-Shen had returned, he added, You two watch over the city gates, but don't make any moves. This might be a ploy to lure us out of the city. Feng-Shen shrugged his bow onto his back. You're not bringing anyone. LIAN didn't want Xianle to deploy soldiers if there wasn't a major offense from Yong'an's side. If Qirong had fallen into enemy hands, then LIAN himself could bring him back. If he brought troops with him, it would be war, and it wouldn't end with only 1 or 2 dead. At the moment, LIAN just wanted to minimize losses. No, they can't do anything to me. He lightly pushed off the wall and leapt over, landing softly down on the ground. Then he dashed in the direction that Long Ying had retreated. Yeah, we're going into the Devil's Nest, huh? After he'd been running for a while, he heard footsteps catching up to him from behind. When he turned his head to look, he saw the young soldier. "I don't need help, go back," Shulian shouted at him. The boy shook his head. "Go back," Shulian tried again. Then he sped up, leaving the boy far behind. He lost sight of him in an instant. After running for 12 kilometers, he reached the mountain top. The mountain wasn't steep, it was more like a hill. Thus, it was called Baitu Hill. That is, small back. According to their scouts, after the people of Yong'an retreated from the city walls, their armed forces and civilians had started sheltering here. Baitu Hill was thick with foliage, and in the deep night, strange noises rustled from all throughout the dark forest, as if there were countless creatures lying low, watching. Shulian went further into the mountain and searched with his breath held for a long time. Then suddenly he saw a form in the distance, a tall humanoid shape, hanging from a tree. He looked closely, then cried, "Qirong!" It was indeed Qirong. He was hung upside down from a tree, and it looked like he had fainted from the severe beating he had clearly received. It must be so joyful to be a Yong'an soldier. Blood ran downward from his nose, and one of his eyes was blackened. Shulian drew his sword and cut a rope, caught the fallen Qirong, then slapped him repeatedly in the face. Qirong slowly came to and shouted at the sight of him, "Cousin Crown Prince!" Shulian was just loosening the bindings when he felt coldness at his back, and he immediately swung his sword out behind him. As he turned, he saw that it was Long Ying brandishing a great sword, as, Long Tencho also uses, and lunging at him. The two swords clashed, the blades resounding as they traded blows, but it wasn't long before Shulian had knocked Long Ying's sword flying. Then Shulian kicked his legs, tripping him, and brought his sword to his attacker's throat to end the fight. "You know you're not my equal. Stop fighting." They'd faced off earlier that day on the battlefield. Everyone who charged at Shulian was killed except Long Ying, who survived taking Shulian's sword head on and dragged himself away wounded. Anyone could see that Long Ying was the leader of the Yong'an refugees, so Shulian telling him to stop fighting naturally implied something much deeper. "As long as your people do not invade further, I promise that the soldiers of the imperial capital will not attack you. Take the water and the rations, leave." Long Ying lay on the ground and stared at him, straight in the eyes with a gaze that made him uncomfortable. "Your Highness, do you think that you're doing is right?" Shulian stiffened. Next to him, Qirong cussed. "Cut the crap! Don't you know who my cousin Crown Prince is? He's the god of heaven! Do you seriously think he's wrong and you're right, you treacherous dogs?" "Qirong, quiet!" Shulian barked. He couldn't answer Long Ying's question. Deep down, he did feel that there was something wrong with what he'd done. But it was the best plan he could think of. Could he really leave Xianle unprotected against invasion and allow the Yong'an rebels to freely storm the walls again and again, perhaps even eventually breaching the capital itself? If only one or two swung their swords at him, he could simply knock them out to end things without going too far. But on the battlefield, blades were relentless and merciless. He simply didn't have the energy to knock everyone out. All he could do was stop himself from feeling and swing his sword. In asking him that question, Long Ying had woken up a voice deep within. "Do you think what you're doing is right?" Qirong didn't have this inner dilemma and kept running his mouth. "What did I say wrong? Cousin, since you're here, hurry up and kill all these damn thieves. 12 of them ganged up on me when I was alone and beat me up." Qirong was a figure of demurring arrogance within the capital so naturally that there were many from Yong'an who hated him. and they leapt at this chance to take revenge. Of course, there were also many from Xianle who hated him. Love that for Qirong, playing both fields. LIAN had no time for him right now and addressed Ying. What do you want? If you want rain, Yong'an will have rain. If you want gold, I'll push over the golden statues and give them to you. If you want food, I'll think of a way. Just don't start a war. Can't we solve this together and find a third path? LIAN blurted those words in spite of himself. Ying might not have understood what third path meant, but he answered without hesitation. I don't want anything. I don't need anything. The only thing I want is for the kingdom of Xianle to cease to exist. I need it to disappear. His tone was blank, but his words were fearsome. Yeah, this is where we're at, huh? It's vengeance. It's pure vengeance. For Ying now, he's not actually, leading a rebellion because he believes in a greater good. He wants to destroy Xianle. That's the creation of Yong'an, apparently. It's the destruction of Xianle. Like, this is complicated. Like, there are all these momentums to it. But Ying himself, his goal is just destruction at this point. Okay. A moment later, LIAN said gravely, if you attack, I won't be able to sit back and watch. You have no chance of winning. Even if all your Yong'an followers will surely die, must you do this? Yes, Ying said. And LIAN gives an oh fucking hell. LIAN gives an ellipsis reply, but oh my... Should I be reading this at this? Oh my fucking god. I don't know what to do with myself. You've read this book. You know what I just saw. I need to note that ellipsis reply down. Oh my... You know what just happened. Oh my lord. Ellipsis reply and then... Oh my lord. Oh my lord. What is this spider-like vibe we're getting? All these... Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay. I'm awake. I'm so awake. His answer was so calm, so firm, that LIAN couldn't say anything back. His fists clenched and his knuckles cracked. I know you're a god, Ying said, emphasizing every word. That's okay. Even if you're a god, you can't stop me. LIAN knew Ying's words were the truth simply because his tone was more than familiar to him. It was the determination of one steeped in duty, one who would never consider turning back. When LIAN said to John Woo, even if the heavens say I must die, the determination within him was exactly the same as Ying's. Okay, so some mirroring here, but we're very, very busy. Moving on. Ying's words were practically a proclamation that he would ceaselessly call forth the people of Yong'an in an endless offense. So LIAN knew what he must do. The sword in LIAN's grip was normally held in one hand, but now he gripped it with both. But just as he was about to pierce Ying's throat with his trembling hands, there was suddenly an odd scrunch sound behind him, and then a cackling laugh. LIAN was shocked that anyone could appear so soundlessly, so undetected. When he looked back, his eyes widened. Normally, enemy soldiers would appear at a time like this. LIAN had already had countless swords pointed at him, so he was expecting a sea of blades. Instead, he saw a single, very odd figure. That person wore ghastly white funeral clothes and his face bore a ghastly white mask that was extremely bizarre. One half crying, the other half smiling. He was seated on a vine, hung low between two trees, and that scrunch came from the swaying back and forth on that vine as if it were a swing. Guess who else likes to sit on swings? Anyway, when he saw LIAN looking back, he raised his hands and slowly clapped. Pa, pa. He cackled again, and the noise raised the hair on LIAN's neck. "What are you?" LIAN said sharply. "Your worst nightmare." Oh my god. What indeed? His instincts told him clearly that this thing wasn't human. LIAN suddenly noticed that the feel of the sword in his hands was wrong, and at the same moment, Qirong screamed. When he turned back to look, the ground in front of him had split wide open in a deep fissure, and Ying was lying on the ground, was being swallowed by that gap. The ground was rapidly closing its mouth, and without thinking, LIAN stabbed into the heart of the earth. He felt the tip of his sword pierce soil, not flesh. Only then did LIAN realize that he'd failed to kill Ying. He couldn't tell whether he felt regret or relief. Exactly. It's complicated, huh? The white-clothed being started cackling again. LIAN raised his sword and flung it at him. The strike was fast as lightning, and it shot through the being and nailed him to the tree behind. He crumpled to the ground without uttering a single sound. LIAN rushed over to check, but all that was left was a pile of white robes. The one wearing those robes had disappeared into thin air. Is that seriously it? Was that it? Was that seriously it? That being's appearance and disappearance were both peculiar to the extreme. LIAN was in shock and didn't dare drop his guard. So, did Bai Wuxiang kidnap Ying? Okay. Not an unlikely alliance, I suppose, but oh my lord. Picking Qirong off the ground with one hand, LIAN said, "Let's go." Yet Qirong whined, "Let's not go, cousin. Let's set fire to this mountain. There's a bunch of Yong'an people around. Those boorish radicals who wouldn't leave the city gates are all hiding here. Let's set a fire and torch this place clean." LIAN dragged him away for some distance, and the farther they went, the more LIAN felt the air grow thicker and thicker with yin energy. It was as if countless eyes were watching them. "Did you not see that odd being?" he snapped. "We shouldn't stick around." "So what?" Qirong asked. "You're a god. You're not afraid of some little devils, are you? If they dare obstruct you, just kill them." "Let's go back first," LIAN said. When LIAN dismissed his rant out of hand and refused to set the mountain ablaze, Qirong's eyes bulged with rage. "Why? Those people beat me to a pulp and are bent on antagonizing us. You heard him. He said he wants to annihilate Xianle. He wants to annihilate our kingdom. Why don't you kill them all off like you did today in the battlefield?" Ellipsy reply from LIAN. All these bad ellipsy replies are so serious, making me emote things I don't want to emote. LIAN's breath hitched, and he shouted angrily, "Why is it always kill, 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 rattling around in your head? Soldiers and civilians are different." "How are they different?" Qirong countered. "Are they all people? Isn't killing the same thing either way?" It was like he had stabbed LIAN right where it hurt, and a burst of anger roiled up. "You!" Just then, he felt something tighten around his ankle. When he looked down, a swollen hand had poked out of the bushes and seized his boot. From up ahead came several thudding sounds. 7 or 8 humanoid forms fell from the trees like rain. They all puddled on the ground, unable to get up. While they were shaped like humans, there was not a shred of clothing on their backs, and they slowly squirmed towards them like giant fleshy worms. Qirong cried out in fright. "Who are they?" Sholian chopped off the hand with his sword and said darkly, "They're not human, they're Binu." Oh, Binu, like the creatures from the first volume, from the first encounter. I see. They're finally reappearing. We're getting more Binu, apparently, because apparently we needed more Binu in our lives. Sholian had never heard of Binu sightings in the mountains near the imperial capital before. Even if there were nefarious creatures lurking about, they were usually quickly exterminated by the cultivators of the Royal Holy Temple. That meant these Binu were intentionally let loose by someone, like your good old man Ying, maybe. I say kind of jokingly, but now I'm a bit unsure. Like, yeah, old man May was always, I say old man. He's like 30s. That's my age. But like he was always, a bit much, a bit dramatic, but not, cackling in the woods dramatic. Like what? Unless he's just gone off the rocks. Like it's possible. It's possible. Maybe this is his inner theater kid coming out. Sholian never expected this war to involve anything inhuman. But thinking back on everything that had happened, he believed more and more that those things were allied with Long Ying, and that kidnapping Qi was nothing more than a ploy to lure Sholian out. Nonetheless, he had no time to think at the moment. He could clearly slice 7 or 8 Binu in half with one swing of his sword, but when Binu appeared, they usually came in hordes. Sure enough, the bushes and trees all around them started to rustle, and they only shook harder and harder as more and more fleshy forms crawled out and came for Sholian. He could kill 10 with one strike, but 20 more would lunge that same moment. As Sholian struck them endlessly, a Binu on a tree focused on Sholian's back and leapt down to seize him. But before it could come close enough to succeed, it was sliced up in a flash. Qi was unarmed. It's Honghong-er. He caught up. He did, didn't he? So it couldn't have been him. Sholian turned to look and saw the one who swung the sword. It was that young soldier. He'd been left in the dust by Sholian at the city gates, but he somehow still managed to follow along and find them. Although that boy was carrying nothing but a worn sword, he was still highly effective and struck down many of the Binu. Those things crawled on the ground and secreted thick glue-like fluids from their bodies, and Qi was screaming at how disgusting they were. He stomped on the head of one that looked weak and noticed that the creature wasn't exactly a threat. "So they're not that tough?" he asked, bewildered. But Qi didn't know that Binu usually appeared alongside crueler, more violent evils. Sholian bit his lip and broke the skin, and wiping the blood on 2 fingers on his right hand, he smeared it on his blade and shoved the sword into Qi hands. "Oh, okay. You two, take this sword and go. Nothing will dare approach you. Don't turn back, no matter what you hear. Remember, don't look back." "Cousin, Qi protested. Sholian cut him off. "The powerful ones will be coming along right behind them. I won't be able to take care of you once they show up. You need to go back and report." Qi didn't reply, just ran away frantically, holding the sword. The sacred sword in his hands held the essence of Sholian's divinity, and all along the road no Binu or other evils would dare come close. His path was unbound, and he disappeared quickly. The young soldier, however, still didn't leave. Of course he didn't. Of course he didn't, Sholian. Of course he didn't. Qi was already long gone, and Sholian didn't have another sacred sword to give him for protection. His only remaining defense was shooting spiritual blasts from his palms. The boy was working hard trying to help, and after an instant's time, all the Binu were finally exterminated. The ground was covered in sticky fluids and corpses, and the stench was stifling. Once Sholian was sure not a single Binu had escaped, he calmed his breath and turned to the boy. "You're pretty good with that sword." Compliment! Honghong-er, you won today. I feel for you, boy. The boy gripped his weapon harder, and although he was still panting, he instantly stood at attention again. Yes, sir! I wasn't giving you orders, so why are you saying yes, sir? Xianle asked. When I ordered you to run, why didn't you say yes, sir, then? Good point, Xianle. I'll give you that. But also, have you considered him? Like, look at this face. That's, He's gonna follow you until the end, Xianle. And we're nearing the end of this chapter, too. Yes, sir, that boy answered. But he realized that his response was strange and stood even stiffer. Xianle shook his head, pondered briefly, and suddenly his lips curled up. But you'd be better suited to a saber. Oh. And that was the end of chapter 36. Oh! Better suited to a saber? Are you kidding me? That's almost a scimitar, though. That's almost a scimitar. But oh my lord, I can't believe all that happened in that last chapter. That was an insane chapter. I am not awake enough for this. It's 12 a.m. Oh no. Why did I do this? I know why I did this. We all know why I did this. This is why I did this. And also, my favorite child in all of Xianle just showed up, so I had to know. I had to know what was gonna happen, and that was intense, oh my lord. Looking at just the side of this, we're just like a little bit more than halfway through. There's so much more. There's so much more happening. But now Honghong-er is here. Soldier Honghong-er, little soldier WUXIANG. I am so delighted. That's honestly carrying me. It's gonna carry me for the rest of this arc. If I get to see Honghong-er in this arc for the rest of the arc, that's gonna carry me. He comes on screen, or rather on the page, and I'm just like, oh my god, that was so good. This is so great. A saber with Tsuchibeta. Don't think I did not notice that parallel with, he gave that compliment to Mooching as well. Mooching, WUXIANG, saber buddies? Okay. Well, I should probably add that on the list of, things WUXIANG and Mooching have in common, because, I have a WUXIANG function list already. I need to get the WUXIANG Mooching list going. And yes, I am completely distracted by the fact that Honghong-er, but also, guys, it happened. Oh my gosh, the art for this, that was like a jump scare. Like, I was just, minding my own business, being like thinking about this whole thing with Ying, and then, I was just like gonna turn the page, and then this is so creepy. This is so scary. Oh my lord. I can't, that page got me. And, so LIAN comes to the conclusion that Ying, he's working towards just revenge. Revenge is the name of the game. He did not expect this. No one expected this. Did Ying know this? Did Ying expect this? Because it seems like from what the text is saying, that he's probably had help. And then the earth kind of swallows him up, and Bai Wuxiang disappears again. And I'm wondering if this is either the start of their collaboration, or if they have been collaborating for a while already. Which begs the question, why? Because this one introduction is already poking a lot of holes in my Ming-Nian-Qing is Bai Wuxiang theory. The holes being that even at this point, I don't see the State Preceptor of Xianle, going out of his way to help the enemy, to give the enemy resources, to do this sort of thing. And also, Ming-Nian-Qing isn't dead or gone yet. We recently heard about him in the context of the king's government people, officials. Like he's around, you know. So it feels weird to me to assume that at this point in time. But if it's not Mei Nianqing, and that was not a figment of Sholian's imagination, it seems like Qi Rong saw it as well, right? If Qi Rong hadn't been there to kind of like affirm that, I'd be a bit like suspicious about this, I suppose. But if it is not Mei Nianqing, like it could very well, like Bai Wuxiang could very well be his own character. That's certainly an option. But if he's not Mei Nianqing, that pokes a lot of holes in a lot of my theories that are kind of building on top of that. Though I suppose the theory that John Wu still could have decided not to kill Bai Wuxiang and was keeping him around somewhere, that could still work, that could still make sense. But oh my god, what a chapter. What a chapter, guys. Like the first couple of chapters of this read were intense as well. The first one in a more build-up kind of sense, the second one in, oh my lord, Sholian, you murder. Did murder. Baby did his first murder. It was a lot of murder at the same time. For Sholian, first killing an already a serial killer. Though I suppose we were on the battlefield, whatever. Gosh, this is so intense. So that was the first chapter, the setup, and the second one was the murder, and then we end the second one by introducing a Honghong-er so that the reader will keep reading, and then we end this chapter by introducing another cliffhanger so that the reader will keep reading. However, I am too tired to keep reading. It is too late for me now. And I'm going to have to come back with a clearer head and some notes after having listened to this when I trim and edit the video before you guys get to see it. And as you can hear from just my voice, I really need to stop talking now. I still have work in the morning. I still have things to do where I need to use my voice. So, as the ship is slowly and steadily going down, and Sholian is making some objectively shit decisions. Oh my sweet baby boy. I'm afraid I'm going to have to say that this is it for me. And while the post-discussion this time around wasn't too extravagant, or I'll make up for it by coming back to you with some theories, with some thoughts before the next video. So until then, I'm gonna go get some sleep. This has been Amelia, aka Spaced Out Puffin, and I will see you in the next one.